Whitney Miller, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to chat about plenty of different topics, which is cool. But before we get started, can you give the guys a 60 to 90-second spiel on your life and what's got you to where you are now?
Yes, I have lived a very different life, and I kind of say I live multiple lives in one when I look back. But basically, I'm born and raised in Texas, and I played sports my entire life, and I was a professional wake surfer. And then got a phone call from a friend of mine that said, "Hey, do you want to compete in pageants?" And I said no right off the bat, but then figured, why the hell not? Let's give it a go. So a week later, I went to Miss Texas and won Miss Texas, and went to Miss United States and won Miss United States, and had an amazing year as, Miss United States. And all the while I was kind of going through, I was working out and training with some fighters that were coming through a company called On It that I was a part of for a while, and realized I wanted to take on the challenge of doing that and being the first national beauty pageant winner to go into fighting. And so I went to full fight camp in LA and full fight camp in Thailand, took a fight. That from there went to start doing commentating for kickboxing for Glory kickboxing for a few years, which is the most fun job ever. And then wanted to start a podcast called True Sex and Wild Love, which I had for a couple of years, which is amazing. A lot of love, sex, and relationships. At the time, I was in an open relationship that was very public, and we talked about the ups and downs of that. But really, all throughout that entire time, all I've been really wanting to do is music. And all I did was hold myself back because I was out of fear, and I didn't think I was good enough. So I said, let's do it. You have one life to live. And now I'm fully 100% pursuing music in Nashville, Tennessee.
So good. And yeah, as you said, that's quite a diverse range of things that you've explored. We'll get on to the music for sure. Those that have listened to the podcast will have heard our chat with Wednesday, who's fucking funny. She's so good. What's True Sex and Wild Love to you?
Well, I think it encompasses really all the topics that people are too afraid to talk about. We really had, we had scientists on there, we had doctors on there, we have experts in the field come on and educate us, me and Wednesday, as well as our listeners, for the true sex part, because a lot of people don't get educated, I think, in the way that I think is necessary for human beings to thrive as a human being. And then the wild love part is, love is wild. You can't put it into a box. You can't exactly say what it is or how it works, or it goes one way for one person and a different way for somebody else. And so it was just a full combination of that. And we turned it into a podcast, and it was one of the most fun things and illuminating things and educational things that I've ever done.
How was that for you? You seem like quite the free spirit, and I don't know if that's always been the case, but was there any, whether it's that and the open relating, which we'll talk about in a sec, but was there any, what was the biggest resistance for you? And were you always kind of quite free in your expression, or did you find at times, through social conditioning or shame, that at times you were suppressed in any way?
Yeah, I think I've always been very open, and even growing up, my family always said, well, Whitney's going to do what Whitney wants to do. And I'm the type of person that just wants to know if I like it or not. I'm not going to take someone's advice or opinion on it. I want to know what it tastes like. I want to know what it feels like. I want to know the experience of it. So yes, I've always had that within me, but I think being a human and being a woman, and we deal with a lot of suppression, and it was a great way of continuing to open myself up to so many different ways of thinking and being, and embracing and supporting other people who maybe think differently than I do. And it was like a very big eye-opening experience. And there were times where I would, have to check myself and be like, okay, why am I afraid to talk about this topic? Or why am I afraid to say how I feel about this? And just get really clear on that. I think I'm actually digressing a bit now. I'm actually being a little bit more private in my life, because for so long, everything was just posted everywhere, that now it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to share every single moment that I'm going through. I get to experience it now for myself, and then decide like, oh, is this something that I actually want to share with a bunch of strangers?
Which ties in nicely to where I wanted to take it next, in that I was fascinated. I'm not kind of poly or open, but I was fascinated with you guys, the way that you shared your story. And for me, it was probably the most publicized open relationship that at least I was kind of aware of. What for you were the pros and cons of being so open for that kind of period of time?
I loved the fact that it was, one, fascinating to people, but I really loved the fact that people felt like they had a support system. Because when it comes to open relationships or polyamory or anything other than monogamy, traditional monogamy, it's taboo. And a lot of people are too afraid to talk about it because they're too afraid of the judgment. And I understand that, and I get that. But for me, I loved the fact that I could be a support system for strangers out there, because people weren't talking about it. Like you said, we were probably the most public, couple that has been so open about the inner workings of their relationship in general, not to mention it was an untraditional relationship. So that was my favorite part, was just knowing like, okay, I'm actually helping people. And the other thing is, I like to challenge people. Just because I live one way doesn't mean that you have to live that way, but why does it bother you so much? Right. And so like, it was a challenge for people, and it was a support system for people, which was, I think, my favorite part of the entire thing of being that open. Because if it was just up to me and no one really cared, and it didn't really affect people's lives in a positive way, I don't think I would have been as open. It felt bigger to me, and it felt like it was almost my duty a little bit to be as vulnerable and genuine and authentic throughout that experience.
Did that feel like pressure for you? I mean, there's pros and cons of being the pin-up couple of open relating, but did that feel like a lot of pressure at any stage, or you felt like you kind of rode that pretty well?
I think we did a pretty good job of writing it pretty well, but yeah, I mean, of course, there is always pressure, because particularly when we ended our relationship, it was, we had people rooting for us, but then we had everyone was like, see, we knew you guys weren't meant to be together. So there was definitely a lot of pressure. Just, I felt bad, I almost felt like, damn, I'm sorry it didn't work out for you guys, whereas for us, we're like, it was hard, but it was like, good, we don't need to be together. But like for everyone out there, I think for me, that was the most bummed out spot, because I still believe that people can thrive in untraditional relationships fully. Just because him and I didn't work out doesn't mean that it won't work for other people who find that, construct better for them. So I think towards the end of the relationship, there was definitely some more pressure, but I think ultimately it pushed me to be even more vulnerable as a person, which is a good thing for me, because I'm very good at distracting and being like, nope, I'm not going to talk about anything.
Yeah. You obviously would have had a lot of conversations with other people who were resistant to publicly talking about their desires or sexuality or ways in which they want to design their own relationship. And a lot of interest from those that probably have gone about their sexuality in a meat and three veg kind of way, but aren't sure where to go. What's the biggest challenge you found from those that reached out to you when it comes to going, fuck, I wouldn't mind kind of dipping my toe in this space or trying this? What's the biggest challenge, other than, I assume, potentially shame and social conditioning for a lot of people?
I would say the biggest one is, oh my God, what if my friends find out? And what if this person finds out? Or what if, like, creating these kind of fake scenarios that can come up. So obviously that's number one, I would say, but I think a lot of people don't know what they want. And a lot of the times when they think about the things that they want, they feel shame around it because of the conditioning, but also they kind of go to the furthest extreme of it. as opposed to, like you said, I want to dip my toe in it. But a lot of people, when they don't know what they want, they immediately go to the furthest extreme. If they're talking about BDSM and they want to dip their toe in BDSM, all of a sudden they're tied up in the middle of town being whipped by somebody. You know what I mean? When really, like, there's so many like little baby steps that you can just barely dip your toe in to see if that's something that you want. And I think that's just kind of how humans are a lot of the times, is we always think catastrophically or black and white or extreme, when there's so much gray area that you can really play in.
I remember one of your interviews or podcast chats around the bigger picture when it came to open relating and the growth and healing that's required in it, and how different it is from people's perception of like, oh, it just means I can go and slay wherever I want.
Yeah.
What was that for you, and what in hindsight was the biggest area of growth or expansion in that? I think it's 8 years. Have I got my maths right? What was that growth and healing process like for you? And I guess insight into that part, if people do want to potentially explore that path.
It was definitely the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. But also I think it made me a better human being. You know, it made me a better friend. It made me a better, girlfriend. It made me a better partner. It made me just a more caring individual overall, because I had to deal with all my shit. I wasn't able to run from it. I couldn't have this competitive nature with women anymore. And if I did, I better find out where it's coming from. My jealousy. Why am I jealous of all of these things coming up? If I'm scared to communicate something or use my voice in the relationship, why is that coming up? And so it was such a time period of getting really curious and getting really analytical with all of my inner workings that I could have easily kind of swept under the rug for the rest of my life. Even now, I'm not in an open relationship, but I know that if I was in an open relationship, I would have to do a lot more work on myself than I am currently. And so it's just, it was like a ceremony. We always said that it was a ceremony every single day. But at the end of the day, like, I feel like I'm such a better human being all around for it.
If someone, coming back to kind of what we spoke about before, if someone wanted to dip their toe in or explore or maybe edge themselves a little bit out of the very traditional monogamous relationship, having obviously spent a lot of time in it and coached many people through it, what are some of the ways in which people might be able to either dip their toe in it or push the edge a little bit just to kind of explore?
I would say listen to podcasts about it, get to understand it a little bit better, of what it kind of entails and all the different ways that you can. I mean, you can bring another partner into the bedroom, but if you're not ready for that, then you can watch porn together. You can read books. You can just have the conversation of what it would be like if you were with somebody else. Because a lot of the times that can be a pressure valve for couples. They kind of just like, ooh, we get to just have this conversation together and it's not going to create this fight. Great. That can bring some more passion and some more fun into the relationship. You can also check out play parties. There's all kinds of parties that you can go to without even having to be involved. You can just go and watch. So there's so many different things that you can do without even being fully intimate with another human being, just to see if like that's something that you want. If you have a conversation with it and you can't with your partner about it and you can't even get through the conversation without freaking out, don't do it. Like, don't do that to yourself. Trust me.
Good call. Good call. You mentioned obviously there's a lot of work to do. What are things that, whether it's open relating or I'm not sure your relationship status at the moment, but what does the work look like within a relationship? Because often people don't understand the mirror that someone is for you. And instead of seeing them as a problem, someone who is in a kind of more conscious relationship will just see that as a mirror and opportunity for growth, healing, expansion. What type of work was required in that relationship, and then I think you're in a relationship after that. What are some of the kind of fundamentals that you feel that you needed to move through from a growth and expansion or a healing place?
I was very closed off for a very long time, and I stuffed all of my emotions, and I would be the strong one, and I wouldn't want to deal with anyone others emotions or anything like that. So for me, it was a big opening and allowing myself to feel emotions that I always thought were uncomfortable. So we had to use like literally every single tool in the book. And it's like, well, we used therapists, we used coaches, we used psychedelics, we used writing things down instead of talking it out because we couldn't get through a conversation. We used taking time. We used like literally every single tool that you could possibly use in a relationship. We used it because it was such a emotionally magnified kind of container that we had to, which is why I feel like, now in the relationships that I find myself in, I'm much more aware of myself, much more, I know what's going on with me internally. And like you said, using my partner as a mirror is a big thing. If I'm getting frustrated at them, why am I getting frustrated at them? I don't go directly to them first. It's not like you're being an asshole because X, Y, and Z. It's okay, what's going on with me right now that isn't allowing me to, just fully relax into Whitney or to fully love and embrace my partner? Because most of the time, it doesn't have anything to do with them. It has more with my internal landscape. Am I not sleeping enough? Have I not been taking care of myself enough? Am I not doing the work that I want to be doing? And I think we just have to start to understand, am I in a place to where I can fully love my partner right now? Maybe I'm not. Okay, that's fine. Why? And I just start to get really clear on that. And I think through open relationships that it allowed me to understand that principle. Whereas I think without going through that, I'm not quite sure how I would have fully grasped it without the experience of it.
You mentioned just in that little part there, am I doing the work that I'm meant to, or something along the lines of that, and also earlier around communication and expression, which tie nicely obviously into the work that you're doing now with the kind of singing and songwriting. What did you notice about yourself when you suppressed that part for so long? What ultimately appears to be your truth, and you kind of kept on pushing it down or pushing it aside? What did you notice about yourself with that kind of lingering in the background?
I kind of lived in a frustrated place. Like everything was just a little bit heavier for me. I was just frustrated at the world a little bit. Because I wasn't allowing myself to do exactly what I wanted to be doing. I was more so frustrated at myself than anything. I also didn't feel good enough to do a lot of things. I looked to my partner at the time, Aubrey, for a lot of the answers on how I was supposed to do things instead of just doing it myself. And also just being able to unlock my voice, say what I want, stand up for myself, communicate in a way that is real for me and not trying to people please and not rock the boat and things like that. It's really like bringing my power into my voice. And because I was so afraid to sing and use all of that, you would think you could just compartmentalize it. But no, I was so blocked in that area that it bled over into my work and it bled over into my relationships. And it's not like you can just take one thing and put it over here and it's not going to stab you every single day. It's going to be annoying, like a gnat. It's going to get out of here until you finally like look at it and it unlocked so much freedom within me when I was like, all right, this is what I'm doing and no one else is going to do it for me. No one's here helping me do it. It's Whitney's fully going for it. And it's been the biggest transformation, the biggest initiation. And at the end of the day, the most fun. I've never been more free, more happy, more myself in my entire life. And it's so cool that I get to experience it. I'm just like that that star eye emoji, going through life.
What for you was the catalyst or the breaking point in which you're like, fuck this, I've got to stop like suppressing what is my truth? Was there a single moment, or was there a period of time where you're like, this has to change?
I think it was the last like 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally, it was just like, you can't do this to yourself anymore. Because like I said, singing and making music was the only thing that I wanted to do. I did all of these other things, but I was hoping and praying literally that it would scratch the itch of music and that I would accomplish something so big that I wouldn't think about music again. And that didn't work. And it won't work, I realized. And so finally, there was a moment where I went down and did ayahuasca. And in one of my ceremonies, I had this huge like knot in my stomach, and I kept trying to throw it up, but it wouldn't let me throw it up. And it was all tied into my voice and singing. And basically, whether it's true or not, for me, what I got out of that ceremony was, if you don't do this, it's going to manifest in some sort of disease in your gut and you're going to die. And I was like, well, that's going to suck. So I definitely don't want to do that. So the next day I walked into the sharing circle and sang in front of 25 people, 25 strangers for my very first time. And it was absolutely terrifying. I was shaking, like, my brother was there too. He's bawling, crying. Everyone's crying. It's this whole thing. And so you would have thought maybe after that, it would have been like full guns a blazing ahead, but no, that was one point. And then finally it was just like, you just can't allow yourself to die with this inside of you. Because my biggest fear became I was going to end up on my deathbed with this dream locked inside of me. And I really thought that was going to happen. And I started taking vocal lessons just to help get over the fear, because it was a paralyzing phobia for me. My body would completely shut down, or I'd start crying, or like I could not make a sound. That's how terrifying it was for me. And started taking vocal lessons just to get over, using that, to where I had to take beta blockers just to go to my vocal lesson. I was that scared. And it got easier. And I finally just came up with this mantra that I've been using. It's just say yes. And it's the most simple thing I could possibly do. But ever since I started doing that, it has absolutely completely taken off in a way that nobody understands. Everyone I talk to is like, this does not happen to people. You realize that. And so it's been very cool. It's been very cool just to see what two words, say yes, can do. Because now anytime fear comes up, say yes, I'll deal with the consequences later.
What you just kind of said then, I found fascinating, in that when obviously you in your relationship as an observer, you were super expressive, but also super suppressed in certain ways. What's the difference between how you, I guess, expressed yourself prior to stepping into this space that is your truth, and how you're kind of expressing yourself now?
There was a part of me that was very expressive and that was very open. But I was also really trying to be that way, and I was putting myself in situations that felt really, really too hard for me, that I didn't necessarily want to be in. But I was under, the impression that the more challenging something is, the better it is for you. And I'm not one to back down to a challenge. So I just kept doing it. And I kept sharing my, my truth through those challenges. But ultimately it was just too great for me. And it was more of a trauma, I think, at a certain point than anything else. And so now the way I express myself is just fully Whitney. There is no other person or influence that makes me show up a certain way. It's
Mm.
I show up exactly how I want to show up. And if I share something, I share something. And if I don't want to share something, I don't have to share it. And
Mm.
that to me, it's just like total and utter freedom.
How does that feel? I mean, freedom's the word that you use a couple of times now, but how does that feel, like in the body from a emotional point of view? And you gave a really good example before with Aya and the message that came through for you, but even just essentially clearing your throat chakra. But how does that feel in terms of the way that you move through the world and the way that you feel about yourself, the kind of before and after?
I just have confidence
Mm.
in myself, and confidence even more so in the universe or the divine or God or whatever you want to call it. I have so much more faith that what is meant for me will show up and what isn't won't. And that really takes a lot of the pressure off. I don't feel like I have to try as hard. I just get to show up and be Whitney and squeeze every ounce of fun and awesomeness that this playground of this life gives us. And then I get to just kind of see what happens. Like I said, I'm really going through life as this star-eyed emoji, just kind of in awe of all of the things that I get to experience and that are happening around me. And I just keep anchoring back to that faith that, like, okay, if something doesn't happen for me, if someone hates my music or they say something, then that's cool. I'll just redirect it to something else, But I do think all of my experiences have allowed me to have this mindset that I have now, because I do sometimes think, God, only if you would have only done this earlier. Like, imagine if you would have started doing this when you were 22, and you would have all this time. But I don't think I would have known myself. I don't think I would be writing the music I would be able to write. I certainly wouldn't be able to handle myself in business meetings with music executives. I certainly wouldn't be able to show up and have this much confidence on stage and know who I am as a person. And so I feel like all of this has really conspired into this perfect smorgasbord of like the awesomeness that I get to experience now in this time.
So good, so passionate. I love it. The two words that you continue to use, which really give a good example of the difference between the before and after, is freedom and playground. And I fucking resonate with both those so much. Like, it does feel like a playground when you're really aligned. For those that haven't experienced what you're experiencing now in terms of that real deep alignment, what's the before and after life? And freedom and playground are two words that you've used, but what else can they like envision it feeling like, or how would it come across, the difference between being super aligned and where you were before, where you essentially had this kind of simmering in the background?
Where I was before, and maybe this will resonate with some people, is anytime I kind of close my eyes or I would get frustrated or something, I would always have this vision of little Whitney, or myself even now, behind these bars, screaming at the top of her lungs, like, get me out of here. But I couldn't. I didn't have the key, and I couldn't get her out of there because I was too afraid of that. And that, it just breaks me down. And it's like, it actually makes me emotional thinking about it now, because it's like, it's heartbreaking that I lived that way for so long. And now, like you said, it is a playground. And I always tell people, I'm like, if there's one thing that you want to do, please, for the love of God, like, just take the smallest step that you possibly can. Write it down. For me, I couldn't even say out loud I wanted to do music, that I wanted to sing. Finally, I got to the point where I could write it down. So if you can write it down and admit to yourself, I want to go start this business. I want to travel to Bali. I want to be in an open relationship. I want to go be a country music star or whatever. It's like, start to allow yourself to dream into those places. And I think the other thing is start to allow yourself to dream into those places, but know that once you do, you don't have to put anything into action, right? Because I think we get so caught up, like, oh shoot, if I say I want to go do music, I better move to Nashville tomorrow and go figure out how to do music. it's like, no, take the pressure off. Just allow yourself to dream into what would that be like? And then maybe you'll do something about it. Maybe you won't. But at some point, there's going to be a point and you're going to go back and be like, oh, that's right. I do want to do these things. Now's the time. So don't go off of someone else's timeline. Don't let someone push you on their own timeline. That was something for me too. You know, people would always ask me to sing when I started a little bit of this journey, and that would shut me down completely. Don't force me to do anything. This is on my own time. This is my own process. This is my own journey. And now someone can ask me to sing and I'll sing for them, you know, but it's just trusting your own pacing, and don't let someone tell you what works, you know, what should work for you. Just take your time and revel in it, because before you know it, it's going to be gone.
I love speaking to people when they're passionate about something. What for you, you've used fear and confidence a couple of times as blockers for you stepping into this. What was the fear?
Well, I was told when I was 10 years old that I couldn't sing and that I didn't have a good voice from someone very, very close to me. And I just took that and inherited it as my own and believed them that I couldn't sing and that I shouldn't sing. And I think for me, it was just that I wasn't good enough, that I wouldn't be loved if I got up there and embarrassed myself. I think the other side of the coin of that was I didn't think I had the tools to take care of myself if that happened. And so when I see confidence now, even now, is confidence comes for me knowing that I have the tools and I have the mindset and I have the heart to be okay if I completely fall on my face on stage. Is it going to be embarrassing and is it going to hurt? Yeah, 100%. It's going to absolutely suck. But guess what? I know that I'm going to be okay the next day. I know that I'm going to get up. I know I'm going to keep going. I know I'm going to do the things to put in place to make sure that my heart's okay, my head's okay. And so I think confidence really has come from that. And I didn't believe in myself enough that I could do that. You know, I was so focused on the validation and the applause externally that if I didn't get enough, then that meant, see, my biggest fear was proved right. And that person that told me that I was 10 years old was absolutely right. And I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And so it's been an entire process of getting finally to this point to where, you know, the fear's still there. It still creeps up. I still want to puke before my shows. And seriously, like I had a big show here in Nashville last week, and 2:00 hit. My show was at like, I don't know, 9 or something. And I thought I was going to puke the entire day. God, it's that feeling now. So yeah, I would say a lot for me came from just trusting myself and showing myself that I had the confidence to get through the hard times.
You obviously into country music. When it comes to the kind of singing and songwriting, as you've kind of really stepped into it, is there a area that you feel most called to when it comes to writing? You know, whether it's relationships, whether it's life, like is there something that you feel kind of more called to and more passionate toward?
I would say relationships. I write a lot of the time through personal experience. And so for me, when I go into a writing session or something like that, it comes from, this is how I would feel, or this is what I would say, or this is what happened to me. And then we can kind of build off of that. It's a little bit harder for me to put myself in hypothetical situations and build, you know, this story from a fairy tale or something like that. I like to be like, man, I dated this dude that did this and X, Y, and Z. And we just go deep into it. How did that make you feel? When did you cry? How long did you cry for? What did he say? You know, we just like really bring it down into 3 minutes, you know, in a song. And it's been like we talked about a little bit, one of the practices that has helped me tap more into my emotions and tap more into how I really feel about things. And I a lot of the times, and maybe the EP will be called, I'm not really sure, but really my music is all the things I didn't say and
Mm,
maybe have been afraid to say, and maybe things that I won't even, wouldn't say in this interview, but I would say in a song.
mm.
And that for me has just been a really cool process that I didn't anticipate once I ventured into this.
What's that process allowed for you? I assume a form of healing and expression. Have you noticed yourself kind of showing up differently now that you've almost got a cathartic like way to kind of move through this stuff and step back into that emotional body a bit more?
Yeah, I need that because
Mm,
I live very much so in my masculine. I always have. And it's interesting looking back, at my past relationships and growing up even, is I always wanted to be more feminine. Like, why
mm,
can't I be more feminine? Why do I have muscles, and why am I good at sports, and I only want to hang out with boys, and I'm too competitive with other women, and I'm not this enough or that enough. And I was always wanting to be more feminine. When actually I feel like this process right now has allowed me easily to just kind of flow into that, as
mm,
opposed to trying to be more feminine, which is just a masculine take on
mm.
trying to be more feminine.
Yeah.
So, and it's inherently just allowed me to like soften a bit more into that, um, without doing anything.
Did you find your ex is quite a masculine human? Did you find that became a clash if both of you were in your masculine? And with the amount of healing and work that you've done, are you able to identify what had you pulled so much into the masculine and the resistance that you had towards stepping into your feminine?
Well, I mean, being pulled into my masculine comes from when I was a child, it
Mm,
was way before Aubrey. And I was teased and bullied for looking like a boy when I was
mm,
in sixth and fifth and seventh grade. It was something that I grew up with a single father, and I went hunting and fishing with him. I was the biggest tomboy that you could possibly imagine. Like, I think I wanted to be a boy. Like, I just
mm.
felt more comfortable doing that. I actually had a psychic one time told me that when I was born, this is going to sound real woo woo,
I love
but
it.
when I was born, that I actually wanted to come in as a boy. And when I was born a girl, I was like, wait, how am I supposed to do this? This was not the part of the plan. Maybe it started then. I don't know. Maybe something got crisscrossed and here I am. But no, in all seriousness, like it's just been something that I felt more relaxed into most of
Mm,
my life. And then being with, Aubrey, who, as you mentioned, is someone who really holds that masculine side of things. It was a clash. And
mm,
that was a very long period of my life where I tried to be more feminine. And it just didn't. It worked every once in a while because I was trying to do these different things. And, maybe I'll try like painting with my period blood or like, I don't know, all of these different things that I could just try to just be more feminine. And it just didn't work
mm,
until, we ended our relationship. I moved to Nashville and started writing country songs.
mm. Do you still find resistance in the feminine and the being in the surrender, or do you find that kind of flows a little bit more freely now?
Yes and no.
Mm,
I think now I am in an industry where the creative side of the industry, forces me to be a bit more feminine in my thinking and in that kind of flowy, emotional, open, vulnerable
mm,
space. But here I am running a music business, which is Whitney Miller, and having to hold my own and I don't have anybody doing it for me. So
mm,
it's all of the masculine side of me that I've cultivated for so long that it's just like, we got this, girl, and then so I have to really find myself even now, in a relationship that I'm in, and is understanding like, hey, I'm so in my masculine right now, and I have to either bring in practices to cultivate and magnify the feminine,
mm,
um, or have my partner help me bring that out. And just
mm,
just being able to communicate that with him, I think is a huge space for me to be like, look, I'm sorry I haven't been as soft as, I can be, and I haven't been as open, and I haven't just we haven't taken a deep breath and taken time to connect, because my mind is going a million miles a minute on how I'm going to make this dream come true. But it's great now that I have the awareness to kind of sit back and be like, oh, okay, we need to get more balanced here.
Yeah. Do you find, and I know for a lot of females, they find this, do you find, obviously Orbs was quite conscious in terms of polarity and masculine and feminine. Do you find that's a protective mechanism, you not allowing yourself into the feminine, or do you think it's just so heavily wired into you from such a young age that you can't necessarily see the protective element that, will often take a lot of females out of that kind of feminine energy?
Protective element within myself, protecting myself from the feminine, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, I had some early experiences on that taught me it's not safe to be in your feminine. And it's probably one of the reasons why I was such a tomboy. I was like, well, I'm going to show you I'm not going to be feminine, And so, yeah, 100%. I'm sure there's still very, deep ties underneath there that protects me, because I do feel very safe in my masculine. And I can watch as I'm around, people, I'll start to catch myself like, oh, I feel like I'm being a little bit too abrasive, or I feel like I'm being this, or I feel like I'm just being a bit like harder in that. But as opposed to knocking that and not wanting that about me, I'm now able to celebrate it a little bit more and appreciate some of those aspects of me that are just very, very rooted in the masculine.
Awesome. Well done on transitioning into what is clearly your passion. And it's, super inspiring for those that probably similar to you have had that whisper that was obviously there for a long time. And then to be able to take the jump and, even as you said, and quite open about the challenges that you still face in terms of feeling comfortable in the new space and feeling sick before performances and things like that. So pretty amazing to see. If people want to find out more about you, your work and your music, where's the best spot for them to find you?
Yeah, so you can go to, first of all, thank you very much. That was very kind of you. I do feel like I haven't done a podcast like this in a long time. I haven't done a relationship where we talk about relationships in a long time. I haven't really gotten into the depths of my masculine and feminine polarities and comfortable places and uncomfortable places in a while. So I appreciate that. Thanks for bringing that out.
I also, and I know we kind of spoke briefly before, but I also am mindful of something being in the past and albeit, I'm sure there's a healthy relationship there. You've reinvented yourself with what you're doing now as well. So just dancing between those two was something I was mindful of as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, because it's a part of my story, and I think there was, as I was transitioning, and there's still I find myself even during this interview having resistance to it, because country music is very conservative. Nashville, Tennessee is very conservative in the way that they do life and their beliefs, and go ahead, more power to them. I come from a very traditional background, so it's a part of my story, and it's made me who I am today. And I think, allowing myself to be okay with that and accepting of that and not trying to shun it is a huge part of my journey and initiation into this as well. So it was a good reminder of that. Awesome.
So where do the people find your work? Where's the best spot to send them?
Okay, guys. So you guys can Instagram is probably the best. It's Wit in Love, WHIT, the letter N, LOVE. I'll be posting all of my shows and new music and things on that. It's the same on TikTok and Twitter, if I even use that anymore. I don't know. And then you can also go to whitneymillermusic.com and you'll see we have the new music video up there that was just premiered by CMT a little bit ago. And all the new shows will be up there. And there's some old demos up there that are probably about to be taken down. So if you get there quick, you'll be able to hear them.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Whitney. It was amazing to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks so much.